And we're back. This is episode 390 of the Colombia Calling podcast. Can you believe it that we've got this far? This week's a very special episode. Well, every episode is special, but this week's a special one because Emily Hart, your favorite newscaster, your Monday morning
Hi.
cup of coffee, is joining us here from Medellin, and she has got with her, well, they're both on the line from Medellin, it's Manuel Oberlader, who's Austrian, and he lives there in Medellin as well, and the both of them, Emily and Manu, we're going to say, Emily and Manu have been working together, and they launched with a team, a whole team, let's not forget, but a whole team, a new exhibition called Contra Mirada, that's on in a museum, there in Medellin, opened on the 17th of August and it's running till the 30th of October. You've definitely got to go and see it. So let's talk about this. Exhibition. But before we jump into that, let's talk to Manu, who's there in Medellin. How does an Austrian end up in Medellin? Because Medellin is a popular place for our remote worker listeners and, of course, those dreaming of being remote workers. So tell us a little bit about you, Manu.
Hi, everybody. Well, I have always been interested in Latin America. I've traveled around quite a lot, and wherever I went to, people would always tell me, you have to go to Colombia. Everybody told me that. So I thought, okay, at some point I will have to visit Colombia, and one of the most exciting places and nicest places in the country is definitely Medellin. It's one of the easiest places also for a foreigner to arrive and to start a life and to get a little bit into these Colombian vibes. So I started my travel in Medellin. I traveled around a bit the country and then ended up again in Medellin. It was actually right before the pandemic started. And I thought I needed sort of also a safe place where I felt safe and where I wanted to stay for a while. And this is why I came back to Medellin. Yeah.
Nice. So, yeah, I mean, that was it. You started and you finished in Medellin. You're there now. And of course, you've immersed yourself in the local culture and you're trying to make some sort of a difference. But so, Emily, how did you get involved with Manu and this exhibition?
Me and Manu have met by coincidence in a number of different cafes in Medellin. And we always, in our first couple of interactions, had the most brilliant conversations. And the most recent time we ran into each other in a cafe because we're both often on laptops in cafes, surrounded by used cups and half-eaten croissants, was about city culture and about Medellin and its culture of innovation. And I think what we've both termed the fetish of the Medellin metro, which is this huge public policy focus on the metro, and whether or not that's a little inflated. And then Manu told me he was working on this exhibition, which related to all of this stuff, which sounded fascinating, and I demanded to be involved, and here we are.
And I like that. I think you should demand, and because if you don't ask or demand in brackets, you'll never know. I mean, that's the truth. So where did this idea come from, Manu? Because I love this. I mean, it shows that you're truly getting involved in the city. You're not living like some sort of economic exile there.
Well, at least I'm trying, Richard. The idea was always, of course, I'm a sociologist, urbanist. I used to work in traffic and transportation, focus on cities and urban agglomerations. And Medellin is, of course, per se, a very interesting case. So I've always been interested. Also, Bogota is a very interesting case back in the 90s and the early 20s, right? So my interest was always there, and at the same time, what I hated most during all of my travels is I don't want to be a tourist, just a tourist. My idea was always, okay, I'd like to get the country, I'd like to get to know the country really, and do something which makes sense, make probably a difference, I don't know, but at least try to contribute to the people I'm staying at the moment. So this was the idea. And I thought, okay, what am I gonna do? It wasn't clear. I knew that I was interested in the metro system. I knew that I was interested in the barrios. A friend of mine had done this kind of tours to the extreme parts of Latin American cities and would walk back. And I was always fascinated. And I thought, isn't that super dangerous? Can you really do that? And what would the people say, and so on and so forth? And he always would tell me, no, it's just fine. I mean, it's just normal people. Just give it a try. Dogs are a problem often because stray dogs, you need to take care of them, and they would come over to you, and you need to try to handle that. But people in general, they're just fine, you know. Um, sorry for making this comparison, but this was a bit the idea. If you go to the barrio, to a place which you don't know, if your Spanish is not perfect, etc., of course there's always these kind of concerns, security concerns, and so on and so forth. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. Went to the most extreme parts of the city, outer parts of the city, and tried to see how does it look there. What do people what can people tell me about their lives there, and about what kind of impact certain kind of developments, infrastructure developments had on their communities. And that's when the whole idea for the exhibition started. That's when I started to develop this idea of a counter perspective, going to the periphery and telling their stories and their narratives. This was the start. Yeah.
I like this very much. Emily, did you go out, on the dog tours in the peripheries, avoiding stray dogs?
No, I have encountered only quite sweet stray dogs, but I joined in the slightly later phase of the exhibition, by which time Manu, with a bunch of brilliant contacts, some of whom were through NGOs, some of whom were through other things, had set up our visits, and also our way of interacting and learning with those communities, which was participatory workshops, which, I mean, better you explain what that is, Manu. My sociology vocab is lacking.
I think this is such an important aspect, actually. Going alone to a barrio and trying to access those people and to start talking to them is rather a difficult. So it can be a bit challenging in the beginning. So of course, if you have contacts in the barrios, this facilitates everything. This changes everything. It's so much more easier to get access to the people, to have interviews there. So what we did is we set up these contacts, try to set up these contacts, and try to organize it a bit more, to structure it a bit more, these interviews which we planned. And we got these lovely contacts in the barrios, in the most, how do you say, Emily, in the most extreme parts of the city, or in the most outer parts of the city?
Yeah, they're effectively the highest up parts, because Medellin, if you don't know, is shaped like a bowl. So we're talking the places on the rim of the bowl. These are the most recent arrivals to the city. They arrived, anywhere between the 80s and still, effectively. And people arrive on the outskirts of the city and build where they find land. So we're really at the extreme edges of the city.
Are we talking about displaced people a lot of the time in these?
Yes. So
yeah,
we're talking about invasions in a sense. So they're called invasiones, no? So these people didn't come legally. They came due to all sorts of different reasons. Some of them because of displacement due to the violent conflict. Others because of economic necessities. Others because of urban violence in other parts of other cities. We've talked to young girls who had to leave Bogota because they told us that they're killing children there. So it was young girls, 8, 9 years old, who told us that the situation was too insecure. They had to leave Bogota and come to Medellin. Others came from the southern parts of Medellin into these areas where we've been. So there's different reasons to why people get to these places, to these informal settlements. And the one we've been to, one of them has the highest percentage of displaced people in the Valle de Aburrá, in the Antioquia region. and the second highest in Colombia after Alto de Soacha in Bogota.
And
So,
what is this area then in Medellin that you're talking about?
so this was the Vereda Granizal, which is officially not part of the municipality of Medellin. It is already the municipality of Bello, which is the neighboring city. And this is a really peculiar thing in a sense. People would always tell us, well, or people, officials from Bello would always, from Medellin would always tell us, we are not responsible for them. This is administratively a different area. But of course, for the people who live there, this doesn't make sense at all because they live just next to the administrative border of Medellin. And of course, they use their infrastructure, they use their metro station, they use their centro de salud, the how do you call it, hospitals or all sorts of infrastructure, also shopping centers, etc., so on and so forth. So their life is oriented towards Medellin, and Medellin says, we don't care about you. It's the responsibility of the municipality of Bello. That doesn't make sense, and they create all sorts of inefficiencies, all sorts of complete lack of public infrastructure. And this is what we try to investigate.
We talk to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
We talk to people who are being forced to change their health insurance towards health insurance geared to Bejo, where there is a chronic lack of services. But because of this, effectively arbitrary municipality line, they're losing an enormous amount of quality and availability of health services.
So what are we talking about here is around 30,000 people who don't have access to running water since 25 years. And they're trying to get running water. There is no legal way to get access to that water since it's an informal invasion. The municipality of Bello says, you're informal, these territories are not formalized, we cannot intervene, we cannot construct anything, we cannot construct the aqueducts or the infrastructure for water, and that's where they are until very recently. Yes,
it's we have the same situation. Obviously, I think all Colombian cities in let's say developing areas and so on and so forth. Between, like you mentioned, Soacha in Bogota, Soacha to Bogota, I mean, you just cross the road. And as soon as you're on the other side, it's a different socio-economic bracket, and it doesn't belong to Bogota. And when you if you're taking the highway south, there's a divide between Soacha and Bogota where it's unpaved. I mean, it's just this one section, and you're just like, oh yeah, that's because nobody can agree who's supposed to do this little section. And I think it's about 20 meters the last time I drove it. I mean, it's just like, throw some cement down. But I think this is a fascinating opportunity to ask you. I mean, when you get sort of like the aqueducto, the water board or water company saying, oh, this is all informal, we can't formalize, we can't do it. What is stopping them from including these people on, let's say, a network and providing them with a basic human right?
Legally speaking, there was an acción popular, so like a sort of group legal case about 5 years ago, and EPM and Bejo argued logistical impossibility. That was their defense, and they won in that instance. And 4 years later, thankfully, thanks to a great lawyer called Jaime Agudelo and a team of students, they appealed the decision and won. This idea of Colombia it's a difficult place to build infrastructure. Nobody's arguing against that. These veredas are on steep hills, there are landslides. Anyone who's driven down a Colombian road can, I wouldn't know where to put one. Like if I was looking at a bit of the Andes, I get that it's hard, but it is not impossible. And it's irresponsible to pretend it was. And a judge finally recognized that recently. However, it looks like was it 7 years, Manu? The prognosis for actually implementing the right to water, which is a human right at individual and community level, the implementation schedule still looks pretty ropey to me. And as Manu said, 25 years without drinkable water, that's too many years by literally any measure.
And I would like to add also, there is also historic reasons to it. Those invasions, there is a political aspect to it. They were not never wanted. They were not opportune. The city administration didn't want to take care of them. So there is this historical aspect to it as well, that it is only in the recent years that city administrations probably even start saying, okay, we can see them as a potential also in the future, those areas who have been neglected for such a long time, who were perceived as being illegals, political, inopportune parts of the society, etc., left-wing guerrilleros or whatever they wanted to call them, right? So they didn't want to intervene for so many years. It was a political issue which came into play.
I think that's one of the great things about this this most recent legal win, is that the judge said, I appreciate it is difficult for all of these different reasons, but not only do you need to implement water, clean water, drinkable water for these people, but you need to do the things that will enable you to do that, i.e. work towards formalizing land titles. If informality of landholding is a problem, fix it so that you can give people water, which I think is a brilliantly holistic approach. And understands the problem, like Manu says. It's political and it's historical.
And often it's the other way around in a sense. It's by providing this infrastructure for water that the hopes and the wishes of the people there is that finally they get formalized there, that finally they will also get a paved road, because once you want to do those constructions in those outer parts of the city, you need to have the lorries driving there and so on and so forth. You need roads to get there. You need electricity. Those areas don't have light at night, for instance. That means if they don't have light at night, means that the taxi drivers don't want to drive there because it's too dangerous and it's dark. Also, as you mentioned before, Richard, it is the same situation. Do you know how you recognize that you arrive in this municipality of Bello, Vereda Granizal? You recognize it in the bus because all of a sudden the pavement stops. All of a sudden the road gets bumpy and you know, now I'm in Bello. Now I'm in this informal settlement, etc., where you don't have roads, where you don't have lighting, where you don't have water, etc., so on and so forth.
But
so it is a very visible or very tactile, how do you say, a very something
like a tangible change right up. But what I mean, Bello it's a city, it's big. Yeah, you know, it's a big place. It's not as if it's just like a satellite community on the edge. I mean, it's a big place. So I mean, so your idea over all of this, and again, we'll go back a little bit, is that you don't want to be a tourist. You want to immerse yourself. You're bringing your knowledge, which is great. I like that sort of thing. You're bringing your knowledge here to expose things that we know, but let's say bring it to the fore. But those of us who've been here a long time, we're all in that boat. We see these things, and I don't know. You know, I get wound up. I get a little bit tetchy because of paperwork and local politics and everything else. These things can be resolved. I think that's the thing. Is there is a will, but what stops? What stops the mayor of Medellin saying, "Listen, 90% of the population of Bello, I don't know, I'm making this up, work in Medellin. Can't we make it a little bit more accessible?" It's like, I don't know.
Richard, this is an incredible, difficult question you're asking me. Very, very hard to answer. I have to say, what I can do, I can only talk about my perspective in that sense. Me as a foreigner, and I guess probably it's a bit the same for you guys as well. We are in a bit an in-between kind of situation. I have the possibility to go to the Fundación or Biblioteca EPM, the biggest public service provider of Medellin, and criticize them. I'm not so sure if the average Colombian has this possibility. I simply do it, or we Emily, me, and the team, we discussed this a lot. We said we're gonna tell whatever we want to say. We're gonna say whatever we want to say, and we have this ability. And I think this is our chance. I think this is a bit my role, or our role as well, to say, look, here there is an issue. And we want to point that out, and I think this can help. This can contribute to a solution. I don't think that we are the solution, not at all, but I think we can contribute a little bit to visibilize and to say, okay, here is a problem, and please take it seriously. And 28,000 people without running water, yeah, it's unbelievable.
I think there's something like very important in the approach that Manu and the team designed, which was that we were totally driven by the voices of the people that we spoke to. And there was some pushback saying, like, why all this focus on water? And the team did 130 interviews overall. We didn't just wander around like, well, I don't see any water. This is probably a problem. Like, no, like there were in-depth, serious interviews with social leaders, with members of the community. And there is no possible doubt that this is a problem in the forefront of the minds of everybody who lives in that community. Mm-hmm. This is not, it's the immunity of the foreigner with, the incredible academic mind of Manu and the sociologists from Bogota. But really backed up by observations made by people who live in that community. And that was what drove the conclusions and our focus on that particular issue in Granizat.
Exactly. We always told them, excuse me, but it's not us who are saying this. It was the people, and we have the evidence here. We talked to them. We went and talked to the social leaders. We went and talked to the ordinary and the normal people, and this is their voices. And we have the quotes here, and we recorded them, and this is what we like to present in the exhibition. And that was our approach. Yes.
And Emily, you said something that has resonated with me. There is the immunity of a foreigner, and we do have that immunity, and we need to use that, let's say in a superhero sense, for good. We need to be able to, rather than getting off a fine or something else, we need to use that immunity, the special dispensation, which is true. It does exist as foreigners here, whether we like it or not, whether we take advantage of it or not, it does exist. The fact that you have gone and done 130 interviews in barrios around Medellin and in the peripheries and beyond Medellin is a huge deal. To then take that, to take the information and to take the results, collate it, and again, and hang on a second, your exhibition is in the EPM museum, right? Is that, so they obviously listen to
it.
Is.
This is my favorite thing about it. Yeah. And Manu just going to meetings and being like, hello, yes, we would like to put this content in your library. It's so ballsy. I love it. In your library.
About state abandonment, and it's them actually.
And EPM not doing their job.
And you've got the immunity there. I mean, to go through and do this. So listen here, guys. I'm going to cut because Zoom is going to cut me off, and I'm going to send you another.
Yeah, we're about to lose our.
I'm going to send you another link. All right, and I'll do the editing on both the sound and the video, so it doesn't look like we're idiots. All right, so I will send you another link in just 1 second. Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay.